Introducing my today's guest in only a few minutes is neither possible nor necessary. Suzanne Ciani has done her works of art in so many fields and she has achieved so many goals, she has got so many awards and recognitions, and she has contributed to the development and understanding of contemporary electronic music to such an amount that I feel kind of guilty to even try to produce an adequate, only some minutes long introduction to our talk. So, should I let the talk go without any introduction today? I don't think so. I think that isn't possible either, nor would it be adequate. All right, so let me simply read aloud what she is writing on her own website, which I highly recommend visiting now. And well, let's go for what she is writing there. Suzanne is a 5-time Grammy Award-nominated composer, electronic music pioneer, and neoclassical recording artist who has released over 20 solo albums, including 7 Waves and The Velocity of Love, along with a landmark quad LP live quadraphonic, which started her Buchla Modular performances. Her work has been featured in films, games, and countless commercials as well. She was introduced into the first class of Keyboard Magazine's Hall of Fame alongside other synth luminaries including Bob Moog, Don Buchla, Dave Smith, and received the Moog Innovation Award. Most recently, she is the recipient of the Independent Icon Award from the American Association of Independent Music. Suzanne has provided the voice and sounds for Belly's sound-breaking Xenon pinball machine, created Coca-Cola pop and pour sound, designed logos for Fortune 500 companies, and carved out a niche as one of the most creatively successful female composers in the world. Alive in Waves, a documentary about Ciani's life and work, debuted in 2017 and is available to watch on all digital platforms. Ciani is a graduate of Wellesley College and holds a master's in music composition from the University of California, Berkeley. So far, the quotation. And here she is, Suzanne Ciani.
Thank you for the time you are willing to spend on my channel here. And as Rachel told me, you are very extraordinarily busy. And so my first question is, of course, what is it what we can be looking forward to? Something orchestra, I think.
Yes, this fall I had collaborated with the Metropole Orchestra in Amsterdam for the opening of the Amsterdam Dance Event. So Buchla, live Buchla on stage with a 70-piece orchestra, jazz orchestra, and it was just amazing. So now, yeah, I mean, the video was recorded by the state, whatever the official.
Yeah.
So, if we can release that, but we can release the audio. And of course, I don't like to release unless it's in quadraphonic.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to, I always play in quadraphonic. So my Buchla is a spatial instrument, spatial movement. But we also took some of the orchestral instruments and fed them through the Buchla and processed them spatially.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to be making a quadraphonic release on vinyl and digital. Vinyl takes such a long time now that it probably won't be out until, the end of next year.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
old.
Yeah.
I see. What's the reason?
Well, because of manufacture, the vinyl manufacture now. I mean, now that vinyl has become the most, appreciated format, the plants are backed up.
Mm-hmm.
I have another album coming out too with a collaboration with a French composer named Jonathan Fitoussi. And we just finished. We did this music over the pandemic period. And then a couple of weeks ago, he came here from Paris and we did the final pieces.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know when that will come out. You know, I think we're looking at next fall. You can release digital very quickly,
Mm-hmm.
but usually what we do is we wait until the physical release can be released.
Mm-hmm.
See, we can all look forward to that.
All right.
Like it's slower. It's slow now. We're in the slow lane.
All right. Okay. I would like to start the main part of our conversation by quoting something you wrote in Kim's book, Patch and Tweak. You wrote the foreword. And I found there 3 sentences which make me think a bit. The first 2, I read it to not to make any mistake. You wrote there, or you are writing there, we are starving not only for the music, but for the process itself, the joy of interacting and experiencing the in-the-moment live creation of sound. And now it comes, analog modular is very much a living, organic medium. Even if I think I understand what you mean, there may be people who think, wow, that's mystical. May I ask you to explain a bit more?
Well, it's such a powerful medium, analog modular, because you are in the moment and you have so many controls and such a powerful feedback system. Even on the simplest level, you get feedback, when you turn a knob and you hear a change. And that's the learning system of exploring and understanding analog, is that you make a gesture and a change occurs. And if you go up the ladder there to the heights of the Buchla, which was designed as a performance instrument, you get a lot of feedback and you're actually able to compose in the moment. You can control a lot of material with voltages, and it's expressive, which means that it's not repetitive. I mean, we all look for refinements, even if you're playing the same Beethoven sonata over and over, that every time it's different.
Sure.
Because where you are in the moment of performing this is reflected in the sound that you make because of the sensitivity, of the instrument. And with the Buchla, it's the same way. You're in the moment, but the compositional process is so fast. I was trained as a traditional composer, but very early on, I fell in love with the possibilities of analog. And I know, maybe now I know why I fell in love with it. It was because it gave me independence.
I see. Yeah.
And women composers were not in great demand.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Yeah, sure.
They're starting to make visible. They're starting to become visible in the film world now, slowly.
So the mystic, you call it mystic, the mystical thing is the automatic or at once response from what you do, or is it that something happened what you perhaps not have planned or not expected at least?
It is a complex instrument, but you can master it. In other words, if something unexpected happens, it's not like, oh my God, I didn't know that was, things do happen. There's a lot of variety. There's interaction on a random level that provides the unexpected, but in a controlled way.
I see.
So, yeah. So randomness, the surprise, whatever. I mean, the surprise, certainly when you're first learning, yes, I mean, the surprises are wonderful. We love, moving something and, oh, I didn't know that was going to happen. But that becomes less and less. I mean, the instrument is always being it is an organic consciousness that has its own operating abilities that we respond to. I give it a lot of credit for being a partner in the composition, but I have to specify the starting points.
That leads me to the next question, or more or less the same question. I planned to make a quotation again, but I do it freely. How deep do you plan a patch? How deep do you go into the consequences, into the implications of your musical idea before you really start the actual patching process? How deep is your plan?
Okay, the patch is actually an early part of the plan. So you start, the plan starts with choosing your modules. What modules do I want? Do I want 2 filters? Do I want 4 envelope generators? Do I want how many oscillators do I want? What are the modules that I want? That's the beginning of the plan. So, and I remember once I talked to an oboe player and I wanted to learn oboe, and I got a teacher and I said, I want to learn oboe. And he said, well, do you know how to make a reed? And I said, no. And he said, well, you can't study oboe until you can make a reed. I said, well, how do I learn to make a reed? He said, well, you have to play the oboe to know how to make a reed. And so I was
yeah, I see.
and the book's a little bit like that, because you have to build up your knowledge and familiarity and relationship with the instrument. It's not instantaneous. You're not expected to understand everything from the beginning. It's exploratory. So over many, many years, when I came back to when I used to play in the 70s, when I came back about 6 or 7 years ago, I referenced a paper that I wrote in 1976 for the National Endowment of the Arts, and it was what I call now the cookbook of how to play the Buchla.
Yeah.
And
Great.
I went back to that paper and said, well, how did I do this? And I looked and I saw the modules that I used. I saw the patch that I used. I saw the techniques of performance that I developed over years of working with the instrument. So in a way, when I went back, I referenced that paper and I was clear, okay, I double gate everything. I'm going to get, 2 sets of gates and envelope generators. So, this is my instrument now. And so it's very, very compact, right? So
yeah, indeed. Yeah.
Envelope gate, spatial control, filter. So, okay, I dropped the computer. Okay, so right. Okay, so what I'm trying to just explain is that the patch itself is a very fundamental level, the basic patch. So you develop a communication system that's going to network your modules in an optimum form, because I'm talking about performance. If my goal is to make a special sound for something, I take out all these patch cables and I patch for that sound. But when I'm preparing for a performance, there are so many layers of preparation that you need to go through. When I could show up at a live performance that I'm going to perform, I have 100 cables that I have to put into place in order to define the communication of the modules with each other. And I've developed this patch to give me what I think of as an optimum opportunity to change things during the performance. So designing the patch is really fundamental, and you can't do that without experience. Yeah, I mean, you can build up experience, and you can, you know, that's why this is a many layered, it's not like a piano where you go up to it and the piano is there and you play it. You go up to this and there's nothing there.
Sure.
And you have to define your instrument. You make your instrument first. The instrument is the thing that gives you the controls that you choose. I can't see this, but this, for instance, is a keyboard.
Yeah.
And I program that keyboard. There's nothing here in the beginning. And then I define the keys. I say this starts a sequencer, this stops it, this starts it, this stops it. This is advances at one stage. This is a transposition. So you define your instrument by programming. This is in the booklet, you know, the interfaces. And once you've done that, then you want your starting raw materials. You need to start someplace. So for me, I start with 4 sequences, 4 16-stage sequences, and that is my raw material.
All right. How does this go congruent to the first statement that the machine is something like a living organism? You advanced very, very planfully. You go quite deep into it, prepare extremely, let's say, detailed. And is there any room for the machine still to act like a human, not a human, like a living thing?
Well, I'm not limiting the machine by defining the communication. I'm defining the communication network, but I'm not closing doors. You know, I'm opening pathways. So, yeah, no, the machine, I mean, good God. I mean, here's the first iteration of these analog machines was more like this, but then they put the keyboard in. And that keyboard, that's limiting. Because when you're playing traditional keyboard, you know, you physically used up because you can use a hand to hit a key, and what do you get? You get a note. How boring, how simple, how undramatic. And, you know, for me, I hit a key on my interface here, and I can get 5 or 6 things. I can transpose, I can change the envelope, I can, you know, there are a lot of gestures that develop dramatically in the music. So, and the machine does a lot of that. I know this sounds a little abstract, but
yeah, it's okay.
Yeah. I mean, you're concerned with what is the machine doing, what am I doing, and it's fundamentally an improvisation. So when jazz players improvise, when jazz players improvise, frequently they start within a framework of some kind. So maybe they're riffing on a standard, a jazz standard. So you won't hear that song necessarily literally, but that underlying structure and framework allows the jazz person
Yeah, I see.
exploration within the confines of that. So my confines are, you know, the 4 16-stage sequences. But you won't hear those literally, you know, a little bit you will, but then I get to explore, interact, and what are those processes? I studied traditional music. I remember, you know, marching through the history of music and getting to, you know, modern music, and Boulez was looking for, you know, a new way to approach composition, and 12-tone music developed it. These were systems that were looking for new ways to structure pitches. I have new ways to structure pitches that the machine gives me. So in a sense, I'm still in the tradition of classical composers who were looking for new ways to structure pitches. That's what all that was. Sorry about my phone running. But my controls are unique to this instrument. So I can take a three-dimensional sequence. So I can take the 16 stages, and then I can access each sequence separately, A, B, C, and D, in another sequence. So I'm sequencing the sequences.
I see.
And once I have that layer of access to the sequences, I can do all kinds of things. I can use random action to do things unexpectedly, like octave transposition or wave shape modulation that gives me a rhythm that's random, but still quite organized. Music, you know, we need structure, and we need organization. That's part of the pleasure of music, is the architecture. So,
sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
Question is, you were talking about organizing pitches. What's the relation between organizing pitches and organizing timbre?
Well, in electronic music, they're very similar, because all the parameters of a sound are controlled, voltage controllable. So I can control the pitch, the timbre, the filter, the dynamic, the envelope, and that control is fluid. It's not, you know, early understanding of electronic music focused on the sound. It said, wow, listen to that strange sound. Wow, listen to the sounds you can get. And I focus on the movement of the sound, fluidity of the sound. Yeah. So 1 second it's here, and one, you know, and then it's up there. So because it's voltage controlled and not limited by physical, you know, we were all fascinated. Wow, look how fast that violinist can play, and look how difficult that is. Well, for a machine, it's all easy. So you do away with that idea of, you know, performance.
Have you ever thought of terms or things like scales of timbres instead of scales of pitches?
Well, I do work with voltage controlled timbre, and it's what that is wave shape modulation, basically. You know, move a wave from a sine to a sawtooth, you know, something simple like that, doing it rhythmically. So, yeah, I mean, any parameter, the spatial movement, you know, that's a big one. How do you move a sound musically? And the the Buchla was really the first instrument that allowed spatial modulation. And today, it's still one of the only ones starting to come. In fact, I just got this module sent to me from Erica Sense. And I'm very excited.
Yeah.
I haven't had a chance yet, but I'm so excited because it's, you know, I'm trying to get the designers to do more spatial control for because the kids, you know, they need these tools or they can't do it. But the beauty of electronic music is that you can integrate the rhythm with the movement. So, you know, because it's all in the same voltage, you know, system. And then you can, you know, spatial sound is starting to come into our consciousness now in our, you know, release formats. You know, they have Atmos and other systems, 360. Oh, starting to appreciate, you know, the beauty of surround immersive sound. But one of the unique capabilities of this instrument is that it can dance in the space, create a space that is, you know, organic to the sound. So you can control, for instance, if a sound is close up or far away. And you can change that on a beat. You can say, close, it's far away. It's close. So you can really dance and design the movement of the sound to augment the musical communication. So if I'm doing ocean waves, I want it slow and panning. If I'm doing a rhythm, if I'm doing a simple rhythm, I might use kind of a simple, you know, spatial movement. And as it heats up, I want it random. I want it.
I see.
It's more exciting. It's like you're sitting in and it's like, wow. So, you know, you design the space to complement the music.
Very interesting. I'm working at the moment at a project teaching Stockhausen's music to students, and he worked a lot with this aspect on a quite simple way, technically simple way. But okay, but anyway,
I love. Tell me about that. I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah, it's.
One point though, back what you were saying about spatial music, I think the distinction that I'm trying to make is that the movement is actually integrated with the instrument. So it's you know, the same voltage that say changes a pitch, changes a location, and so it's a controlled voltage spatial movement. So it has nothing to do with 1 million speakers. I work with 4 speakers. I can dial 60 speakers. It's not about the number of speakers. And people get confused about that because they get impressed with, oh my God, there are 100. I mean, I've worked with, you know, 70 speakers. I work with 4 speakers. I never work with less than 4 or fewer than 4. What's that? Fewer than 4 speakers. So I just want to make the point that control voltage spatial movement is important in the instrument design, and we have that option. We've had it for many years, but we don't have it available now in the new releases of Eurorack systems. Yeah, okay, so is there a wrong pitch? Yes, of course. I mean, pitches are complementary, you know, to a composer. You know, you work in a pitch field of pitches that you want to interact with. You can also have situations where it's noise. And noise is not as critical for specific pitches. And in fact, you don't want to hear in noise a direct pitch. You want that modulation. So again, this is like so easy in analog, where you just, in my Buchla, I have one little button here, and I can do 6 different kinds of noise modulation. I can warp it, I can morph it, I can. So making noise is this, it's just one dimension of electronic music. It's a huge part of it to be able to make interesting noises. It's one part. So here's my dilemma, is that because I came from a classical background, I mean, I discovered electronic music when I was in graduate school. I was at UC Berkeley, but I also went to Stanford, and I studied with Max Matthews and John Chowning. Chowning was the father of Max Matthews was the father of computer music. And John Chowning is credited with having invented or discovered frequency modulation and timbre design. So I loved all that. And I did work in music concrete and with the computer and generating sound with punch cards and, all of those techniques for making sound in a technological sense. But I wanted to integrate my classical ear as well. It had to do with pitch. And these early instruments were not good at pitch. They were unstable. They would warm up. They would warm up and the pitch would change, and you couldn't even record them. Then time goes on. When I came back to the Buchla 7 years ago, again, I was exploring pitch, and I could not tune because let's just say that the capabilities of the modules were not refined enough to control pitch. Couldn't tune. So I had to develop things. I had to get around it. I had to have special modules made that gave me the pitch control. So I don't know about, I haven't spent a lot of time with a lot of the Eurorack designs. I have a make noise unit down here that I'm just getting into here. And I do this even though my performance instrument is this Buchla. And let me just say that, in the big umbrella of electronic music, there's so much under there. And the one little part that I'm concerned with is live performance.
I see. Sure.
In the early days, we couldn't record, especially quad. So I would go around these quad concerts, and there's very few documents. I have documents of 3, but they're not quadraphonic documents.
By the way, let's give our listeners a chance to relax from these more philosophical questions. you showed different equipment. Yeah, I love it as well. Of course, it's great and important too. But anyway, one simple question: how often and why do you get yourself new gear? You showed us 2 pieces, for example. How often does it happen that you say, "I want this"? I have to admit, please, beg your pardon. I have to admit that sometimes I go somewhere and see and say, I want this machine. I don't know exactly what it is doing, but it looks that nice. I want to discover it.
Yeah, it's exciting, isn't it?
Yeah.
There are now thousands of modules, thousands. And, you know, I am primarily a Buchla person, right? I mean, I grew up with Buchla. I worked for Buchla. I have Buchla in my blood. So, you know, for me, I'm committed to this instrument, and it's a full-time job, just keeping this thing up and running. So, but it does always morph. It's always changing. You know, it's a very slow evolutionary thing. You're not even aware of it. But if I look at a photo of something that I played in 2015, it's not this. You know, what happened? I don't know. Oh my God, I replaced the 250 with the 248 clone. I replaced the 291 with the 291 clone. I had modules built. I have modules built if I need them. And so that's what happens. I try to keep it compact. But why do I get new things? I mean, mostly now I get new things that allow me to do what I need to do. You know, if I can't tune something, I have to build something that will take those voltages and redefine them. And if I want more spatial control than I have, say for reverberation, there's no voltage controlled reverb in this system now. That's in the 70s. There was a spring reverb with a voltage control that Buchla designed, so you could move the sound, you know, on a beat. Now, the best I've gotten is, well, first of all, the processing is so elaborate now. I mean, we had a spring reverb and that was it. Now, with Eventide, my favorite, you know, the H9, I have dozens of, you know, categories of effects that I can program and create especially, you know, for, I feel a little guilty because it's like, you know, whipped cream and decoration on top.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, but once you get into that, and it's so integratable because I had these modules, the H9s, I had them modified. Somebody in Denmark, Northern Lights, Sasha Haber, he takes those modules and he will put a control voltage input. So you can integrate the effects with the control voltage of the music, and that's very powerful. It's very powerful.
Can imagine.
Yeah. So it's part of my act now. You know, I have all these processing choices. You know, sometimes I just use a flange. You know, when I'm in it, you know, it's a musical reason. You know, I try in my compositions to my performances to take you on a journey, and it's very organic. So going from one scene to another is an organic process because that's what it is in the machine. So if I'm going from the ocean to a rhythm, you know, I might introduce a flange because that's kind of connoting a non-natural world that we're leaving the ocean. People think my ocean sounds are samples. They say, oh, you know, did you sample the ocean? No, that's the Buchla. You know, it can make the ocean. It can make a beautiful sound of the ocean. But then when I'm transitioning the white noise to a new use and signify, you know, subliminally, subconsciously, whatever, that we're going into a new realm from nature to something else, I might introduce this flange that suddenly, oh, this was the ocean, but now it's going out into space here. What's happening? Yeah. So, you know.
Interesting and nicely described. Thank you. What about What about the relation, sometimes even the strange discussion, analog and digital? What about using digital modules in an analog world? Problem or not?
Well, you know, I used to have very clear feelings about digital and that they had no place. It's like, you know, you needed the interface, the physical interaction. But now I see, you know, because I have more contact with the kids now, that these digital replicas of analog modules are very useful and powerful introductory tools, you know, to lead you into the next. This type of music does have many levels of understanding. And you can get a good understanding of some of the fundamentals of sound production using the digital, you know, replicas. All that's great. But what's the ultimate beauty of this field is the interaction physically, you know, the interface. And Buchla was somebody who focused on the physical interface. So this is no easy task. You know, here you have this potential, you have, you know, sound in this box, and how do you touch it?
I see.
Buchla used to say, because when I worked for him, I said, Don, you know, I really want to understand the electronics here. Can you teach us about what's going on? He said, well, look, he said, just know that there are two sides to this. There's the inside and the outside. You can design the outside, and somebody else can design the inside. So that, you know, that was such a lesson to me to know that, you know, some people get really fascinated with the technology part of it, you know, the insides, and all that's fine, but it's not, you know, it's a collaborative field. So the person using the outside is collaborating with the person building the inside. And frequently you don't find those two talents in the same person. And you know, my philosophy has always been, if somebody else can do it, let them.
Sure.
Yeah, you know, I want to do what only I can do. You know, I want to focus on my unique and special, you know, whatever it is I can bring to the game. And it's not like I'm the whole game. It's a collaboration. Anyway, with Buchla, you know, this 248 module was one of the first modules that had a digital component that he made. It was in the 200 system. And actually has two computers. And so I can switch, you know, display from one to the other, and I have two separate control systems. And that's digital. It can be stored, it can be memorized, it can be recalled. And that type of integration is, you know, this module, I mean, I spent many years with it. And to me, it is the heart and soul of a performance instrument, that 248. And for Buchla, he called it a failed design.
Oh, how is that?
So there you go. I mean, to Buchla, it was a failed design. To me, it's the ultimate design. So that points up, you know, the difference between the engineers come from and viewpoint and the performers.
Yeah, sure.
Viewpoint.
The question is how complicated, or no, not complicated, how complex may a single module be, might, must, can a single module be, without, let's say, leaving the philosophy of modularity. What I mean is, if it's Erica synth, you showed it. If it's make noise, if it's intelligent things, the modules have gotten more and more complex inside, and the relation of possibilities of the potential to, let me say it simple, to the number of jacks to put cable in, has got more and more to the advantage of function and complexity, and is leaving, or maybe leaving, the field of modular synthesis. So what do you think about that? These complex things, not only braids and plates and modules like that, even other ones. Even Rubicon, intelligent Rubicon is already quite complex and leaves a little bit the idea of modularity, I think. What do you think about it?
Well, I think this, on a fundamental level, there needs to be the ongoing conversation between the designer and the performer. And that if one goes off without staying in the conversation, bad things can happen. So, and also the temptation of digital. The temptation of digital, once you start to get into menus and unreal-time interaction, I mean, it's okay if you have memory recall and you're going to call up something in a live performance. That's great. But in a live performance, you can't go in there and start hitting buttons and looking at screens and changing things. Not really. It shouldn't be designed that way. And this is what happens. I mean, with Buchla, when he went into the 200E, he had already gone from the 200 into a lot of, as digital became popular or became possible, he went through many designs of purely digital instruments. I wasn't interested in any of those. And then he did the 200E, which is about when I came back on the scene. And so my initial confrontation with this 200E was purely on the basis of my history with the 200. I was totally I couldn't see the 200E except that it wasn't a 200. Why wasn't it a 200? Well, it had memory. One of my joys in early performance was going from one situation to another in this choreography of movement that allowed the transition. Now I have a scene, I can call it up. So I had to learn new performance. At first I thought, this is boring. You're taking away my, but anyway, I've come to, I find it just as challenging now. I have found that I can, there are new performance techniques. What I didn't like about digital was that it took him away in the 200E. It was less under the umbrella of performance. So when you're designing a performance instrument, every detail needs to be understood in that context. So for instance, he had instead of the 248, he had the 250. This seems like a little thing, but the 250 was not performable. It was digital and it had a lot of menus and possibilities and things. And I did perform with it, but for instance, if you wanted to change an octave, it wasn't, see, in this machine, if I want to change an octave, I just go like that, right? I can get any octave I want instantaneously. In the 50, you had to push a button and you couldn't go here directly. You had to step through.
Oh God, yes. Yeah. I see.
That didn't work. There were lots of details about that, and that increased my awareness that a performance instrument, which is what when I worked for Buchla in the late 60s, I intersected his career at a moment when he had gone from designing an interesting way to make sounds to conceiving a performance instrument. Mm-hmm. So I was young, impressionable, and he said, this is a performance instrument. And I believed him. And I learned to perform it. But it wasn't that performable. I mean, it was really challenging, but it is performable. So when I came back, my big complaint was that it was not the 250E. I mean, the 200E was not as performable as the 200. Some of those things you live with because they help you perform by packing it in a small suitcase and. Mm-hmm. But for instance, this sequencer, this is digital. This sequencer is digital, and what that means is that I can't interact with it. In my 200 days, I had a sequencer. It was huge. Had 4 rows of 16 knobs.
Wonderful. Yes.
And I could go in and change the pitch. It was wonderful. I can't interact with it now. It's dead. It's in the corner. It's got my sequences. And so I've adapted my performance to deal with that limitation. And if I were to get a new 16, 4 rows of 16 stages, I wouldn't be able to go around on airplanes the way I, it's so, there's a trade-off. On the other hand, in terms of size, I think Buchla really did define a performable size that, this is not a Eurorack, it's bigger, right? And that's important, because you've got to get your hands in there and do stuff. I don't know how people play Eurorack. The other thing I don't know how they. I go crazy with, this is so easy with the, with the control, the difference between the audio and the control voltages with the patch cables. When I look at a Eurorack system, I mean, I don't see that well anymore. And I have to go like, is that an input or is that an audio or is that a control? It's like, it's all not.
Eurorack is fantastic in the studio, given that the room is big enough. But to go on tour, oh God, it's possible. Yes, it is possible. But okay, well, I would like to talk about another aspect, not so much the technical things, but what about the importance of different fields of artistic, artful activities for the development of an artist? Let's talk about three fields I see. Of course, live performance, sure. Producing albums, doing studio works in general, or when we are talking about synthesizers and things like that, or doing sound design. I see 3 things which all may have certain roles and certain, let's say, a certain importance for the development of an artist. How do you see this?
Yeah, all those areas are certainly important. I've certainly done my time in each one of them. Sound design was a big part of my financial success in New York. Studio albums, my goodness, I've done, over 20 studio albums. And actually, I just finished one, like that one with the French composer a week ago. So, yeah, I mean, it's wonderful. I'm not, you know, my career has been so long, and it has had so many, you know, layers. And I never know what the next layer is, or I used to think I knew, you know, when I was with Buchla, I was never going to play the piano again. Then I went back to the piano and I said, I'm never going to perform the Buchla again. And I came back to the Buchla, then I went back to the piano. So, you know, it's a meandering course of discovery. And I think that it's kind of like, you know, I admire weather patterns because they're a bit unpredictable, and they are something we don't control. And I think very often that our individual evolution is also something of a weather pattern.
Kind of.
Yeah, yeah.
Sure.
So, yeah. So you're doing this now. You're doing your blogs, and I'm sure that has been the only, you know, aspect of your.
Not really.
Yeah, yeah. But it's fun, isn't it? I mean, you're
Oh
doing this
yeah, and it's you can learn. I learn a lot. I really learn a lot. It's my main job is being a teacher, I have to say, and composing, even mathematics. Another way, and my second job is doing indeed sound design, and by preparing, for example, our interview here, I learned such a lot of things. Or perhaps no, learn is the wrong term. I got aware I got consciousness about things which I hadn't thought about quite a time ago.
I mean, we live in a world of sound design now because we have so many digital, you know, presences in our lives. You know, every time you hit a button, it makes a sound. Every time you walk into an airport, it makes a sound. You know, we are triggered by sound, and you know, it's very important that some, you know, really good consciousness goes into designing the sounds that are going to be part of our lives. I mean, I just, you know, things are beeping all over this room. You know, so yeah, I mean, sound design is here to stay, and it's important, and it has a function that is maybe beyond our personal, you know, creative experience or sphere. You know, it's more of a world presence, and it's synonymous to a lot of, you know, all that work that I did in New York in sound design was anonymous, right? I mean, everybody heard it, but nobody, it wasn't an identity connected to it. So I don't know if it's a wonderful field, because it usually, you know, I think electronics give you the capacity to work in a very tiny time frame. And control things surgically in these tiny little spaces. And I always loved that. You know, I did a sound for the phone company once. It was 1/3 of a second. And for me, it was like it had a beginning, a middle, and an end. You know, I saw it as an architectural, as a compositional statement. So I think all of that subtlety and skill you can bring to this tiny universe. It's fascinating. It's wonderful. Yes, you can make money doing it, but you know, making money in music is a complex.
Kind of.
It's very complex.
I think the main thing is consciousness, getting consciousness concerning sound, and very interesting your view on time scales in sound design. That's indeed, that's true. All right. When will we be able to see you live in Europe next time?
I guess I'm coming in June.
Wow. Where do you go?
Well, you know, I don't keep this in my head.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, I never know where I'm going till I get on the plane, and then I don't even know. I just, yeah. But let me just say one more thing about time, because we talked about the tiny time.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that this gives us is very elongated time. You know, machines go on forever, right? So when I had the Buchla, early Buchla, I had it in my studio and it was on all the time. And it was making sound all the time, but sound that could vary and keep it interesting. It became an ambient space of sound. And one of the attractions to me of this sound, of the instrument, was that it could do a very slow rhythm that humans couldn't. Mm-hmm. For humans to hold a rhythm, it has to, you know, integrate with their physical whatever, you know, walking, talking. Ask a drummer to play at 40 beats per minute or less, and it's like they can't do it. And instruments can't, you know, they can't sustain beyond, you know, they run out of breath, or the bow ends, or whatever it is. So electronic music gave this opportunity for endless sound as well, you know, on the spectrum of dimensions. It could go the way infinite. So kind of like the ocean, you know, is, to me, it's an infinite sound that I like. Okay.
I know that you are having a concert I think in Los Angeles on the 20th of January, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Are you preparing for this, or is it already fixed and planned?
No, I will prepare for it. You know, right now I'm in holiday season and I'm focusing on family. And so you know, it's always in the back of my mind, and I will, you know, focus on it, but probably not until the beginning of the year, because now I'm doing other things. It's my playtime. You know, I'm going to play with the analog modules. I'm having some kids come up and play with me in the studio. So I don't have children and I don't have grandchildren, but my friends have children. And a lot of the children are electronic musicians now. I get to play with their kids. You know, it's so much. Yeah. And also I get to endorse, you know, their professional choice, because as a parent, I think if your child suddenly commits to music as a career, it can be frightening. You know, and I just like to say, you know, it's all fine.
Preparing, perhaps last matter, preparing for a concert. How do you manage, let's say, the last 24 hours before your concert? Is it a problem? What kind of problem?
No, you know, the truth is that when I first started performing, I had no idea, you know, what the evolution of it was going to be. And I thought, well, gee, maybe I should be doing something completely new every time. And in fact, it has evolved, but it's very slowly evolving. You know, so the orchestra piece that I did with Amsterdam, for instance, was a completely, well, it wasn't completely new, but it was a new kind of, what's the word? You know, it's amazing, that piece, you know, with the whole orchestra. Yeah. So I can't wait for you to hear that and for it to come out. Yeah, it's going to take a while, but anyway. So no, you know, I have nerves of steel. I don't worry ever. because
good.
it's counterproductive. I take care of business. Yeah, I take care of business and I do what needs to be done. I respect that, I need to be responsible for what I do. But I also trust that I don't get nervous because it's counterproductive. I just approach everything with great confidence because that is what serves the music.
Great.
I'm a conduit for the music, not for my angst.
Okay, I see what you mean. Yeah, sure. Yeah, all right. But I think there may be one or another artist who experience the last 24 hours before a concert in a different way. All right. Wow, Suzanne. Thank you a lot.
Thank you all.
Thank you a lot.
Pleasure. I'm glad we got together. We finally got together.
Yeah. Perhaps not the last time, and perhaps you think of having some concerts in the Czech Republic, in Prague as well, from time to time.
Oh,
I would like to help organizing it.
I love Prague, and for sure, that would be wonderful if you could organize something. That's how I work. I don't have an agent, I don't want to be a commodity in somebody's big business. I work really from interest communicated. So I don't solicit. I get, I respond. So if somebody is interested, then I respond. Yeah. So wonderful. Okay. I was in Prague and I got wonderful glasses. The glassware is beautiful.
Yeah. We have great factories working on glass. That's true. All right. Enjoy your day. Enjoy your weekend. Have a great time and enjoy your holiday time.
Thank you. Merry holidays. Okay. Bye.
Bye. Bye.